everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Rio. I'm your host, Ysmaine, and here with me is Kelly. Hi, Kelly. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Me too. Excited to be back for another episode. And today we're going to be talking about a classic, right? We're going to be going over the difference between what's a pre-approval and a pre-qualification. Why does it matter to you to know this? Why should you have one over the other in order to get started with your home buying process? So we're going to be going over all of that. Kelly's going to be giving you a lot of details on what they require, what they need, and what is needed for you to move on with your home buying process. But first, as usual, we're going to be going over our myth of the day. And today it's a pretty common myth that I see. That you only need to get a pre-approval after you find the house you want. You probably see that too, right, Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
they'll call me like, well, we found the house, put an offer in, now we need our pre-approval. So not good.
Not ideal. Not ideal. So the reason this is a myth and the reason why you should get your pre-approval before you find the house. There's different reasons for that. Can you get a pre-approval after you found a house? Yes, you will rush to make it happen for you if that's the case. But ideally, you would want to have it beforehand. And Kelly, you can let us know why that is so important from the financing perspective. But I'm going to put my 2 cents in on the real estate market perspective. The main reason why you get a pre-approval beforehand is because of timing. This market is very competitive right now. It has been for a couple of years now. It is getting better, yes, but it is still like a very low inventory, which means there are more buyers than houses in the market. And therefore, if you're not ready to go and with a pre-approval in hand, you're not able to put an offer on the house right away. It may take you a day or two. And with that day or two of delay, you could already miss on that property. I was just talking to Kelly before we went live, and I got a call from an agent telling me that the showing I have for tonight and the house is just in the market, Howard is going to have a deadline for tonight. So that's going to be like, okay, if my client wasn't ready to go, we probably would miss out on the house because the deadline is within 2 hours after our showing. So that's one of the main reasons you should have a pre-approval and be ready to go prior to finding the house that you want to put an offer in. That's the main reason right now. There are other reasons. So Kelly, can you let us know why are they so important when it comes to the financing side?
Yeah, so with a pre-approval, because it has happened that if you don't have one, you go and you fall in love with the house and you haven't gotten your pre-approval in hand yet, there's a chance that you may not be approved for that house. So it's very important to have that in hand, have your credit pulled, everything was looked at, your debt versus your income, all the pay stubs and all the income and how long have you been, do you plan to continue to work? Like there's tons of things that as a lender, that we need to know. So, cause I have had it where people, fell in love with the house and, they wanted to put an offer in the house, but they had no pre-approval. And when they came to me for a pre-approval, they didn't qualify.
Yeah.
So being qualified prior to going to looking at houses is definitely key.
Very key.
Unless you're a cash buyer and you have the cash.
That is a different story.
Story.
And also to clarify, there are different reasons why you may find a house and then not be able to qualify for that house in particular. Of course, it could be that you didn't qualify for the amount, but that's not always the case. It could be that you qualify for a type of loan that does not allow you to buy that house because that house itself doesn't qualify for that type of financing you qualify for.
Correct.
That's another thing people don't understand. It's not always like, oh, I can qualify for $300,000. I don't see a problem. I'll qualify. That's not always the problem. It could be that the type of loan you qualify for may not be the type that is accepted by that property. So that's another thing there.
That's a very good point because that's a big thing with FHA. I'll just use FHA as an example. We use FHA a lot for first-time home buyers because they may not have a whole lot of cash to put down, and their credit may not be the best. But if you're a first-time home buyer and you're looking for a property, you need to make sure that that property is FHA
eligible,
follows the FHA guidelines, because FHA is very, very, very strict on properties. So that's just a really good example, is knowing which product you fit into when it comes to a pre-approval.
Exactly.
You know, and knowing your finances. Not 9 times out of 10 people don't know their finances, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's true. And on top of that too, so like, of course, you want to know that you are eligible to purchase for whatever amount you're going for. You want to know that you're getting the right loan type for the property you're looking for. And then the other thing too, when you're going through the pre-approval process with Kelly, some things might pop up that you didn't even know. It might be popping up on your credit report, or it could be that maybe you need to pay down something in order to be on the right debt to income ratio. And you would never know that if you didn't talk to Kelly first. And then those things, if they pop up and they are, not allowing you to pre-approve, you have time. You have the luxury of fixing those things up to put yourself in the best position, maybe for a better interest rate or whatever it is. So doing it ahead of time is key, because if you find a home and then you have to do that, Kelly might not be able to get all that figured out in one day. There we go, you missed the house. You know what I mean? So there's so many different factors. We're talking like, okay, some people can get a pre-approval in hours. Great. That is doable, but not everybody can. And we don't know that. And maybe sometimes the client doesn't even know that until we start that process, like Kelly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're going to go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we're just going to get into it. That way Kelly can really narrow down all the details for you guys. So let's get to, what is a pre-qualification?
So a pre-qualification is more of like an informal way of, people think it's a pre-approval and it's, legit to go give to a realtor to go look at a home. But a pre-qualification is really just a conversation that a loan officer or a bank has with somebody. They do go over, income and debt, but it's not a true pre-qualification because they didn't actually pull credit. They didn't actually get pay stubs or W-2s or any of that kind of information. It was just basically a conversation like, here's where we're at with our income and here's where we're at with our debt, but nothing was gathered or collected to verify the information that was talked about over the phone. So that's why pre-qualification is not always the best thing to have in hand. And you also don't always, 9 times out of 10, don't get a cost estimate with a pre-qualification. And that is key with a pre-approval. You should always have a cost estimate so you can see the list of all your closing costs, all your settlement charges, as well as, what the bank is charging, your interest rate, and all that good stuff. A pre-qualification doesn't have that information usually. And even some people who issue pre-approvals don't issue cost estimates.
Yeah.
So pre-qualification is not really an actual pre-approval.
Yeah, and I do get this all the time, and it's easy to know when someone has a pre-qualification instead of a pre-approval. Of course, they don't pull your credit. That's the main one there. But they may have done a soft pull. I've had some lenders do a soft pull and issue a pre-qualification based on that. If you are out there as a client and you're looking to get a pre-qualification or a pre-approval and they don't pull your credit, or they do a soft pull, that means they're not issuing you a pre-approval, because pre-approvals do require a hard inquiry on your credit score. And yes, it's going to hit you for a couple points, but it's very minor and it is needed. And that pull is valid for 180 days from the day that the lender pulls your credit. And you are in Pennsylvania, you are allowed to shop around for lenders. Do not recommend going for more than 3 because that's a lot of inquiries, right?
Yes.
But if you want to compare, let's say you went online and did something, and then you'd like to talk to Kelly and get a comparison, I would highly recommend doing that. As soon as you do it within 14 days of when they first pull your credit. I don't know if that's the same in other states, but in Pennsylvania, it's 14 days. If you do the pools, shop around for lenders within that time frame, it will not hurt your credit, like meaning it won't hit your credit with points again for every inquiry. It would still show the increase, but you won't meet your score with multiple points. But it has to be within that window. And then I recommend comparing and always request a cost sheet. But a pre-qualification is not going to hit your credit. It's not going to show up as an inquiry. If they do even get your social, it's going to probably be a soft pull. They are not going to tell you what kind of interest rate you're getting. They're not going to require any documentation. You're not really going to get much information. They might just say, hey, you're pre-qualified for whatever amount. And they're not even going to tell you, like, what's your monthly payment. So if that happens to you, be sure that's a pre-qualification, not a pre-approval. So going now into what's a pre-approval and more detail about it, Kelly can clarify that.
So a pre-approval is a more in-depth analyzing of your debt versus your income. So we do a hard pull, like that's the first thing that we do. We pull your credit because that's going to show us what all your debts are. And then we also, our system can sometimes pull a verification of employment as well as a verification of assets. Mm-hmm. So there are a couple steps for the verification of assets that the borrower has to complete for their bank statements to get put into our system. But the verification of employment, I've noticed over time, a lot more employers participate in this program. I still collect pay stubs, W-2s, and I don't always collect bank statements if the bank that they use does, they can follow the steps for the verification of assets and it loads right into our system. But if they don't have access to a computer to do that right away, then I would collect the bank statements. But with the verification of employment, it usually tells me, the name and address of the employer, their income. If they've been there for a few years, it'll show me their income from the last few years. It will break it out into their regular pay, their overtime, bonuses, and there's one other category. So that's, if that pulls, then I can issue a pre-approval pretty quickly. I still collect all the documents because a pre-approval does require me to collect the documents to compare what my system says versus what the pay stubs and everything say. But it's definitely, they're usually on target. Like there's usually not too much of a difference in what our system pulled versus what their income actually is, unless they recently got a raise and maybe it wasn't reported.
Yeah.
That's usually what doesn't show. Sometimes people are like, oh, I just got a raise, but it may show what the old hourly or salary rate is. But like I said, a pre-approval is definitely, we look at your debt versus your income and we verify what you can and what product to put you into as well. Because once I see that, then I know where you fit. That's right. Where you fit into. So
I think another huge part of the pre-approval that people don't even think about is this is the opportunity for you to talk to a loan officer like Kelly and see also the potential grants that you may be qualifying for. Yeah. And that takes time too. They're just going to have to look what's available in the county that you're shopping at, and for yourself, there's different grants out there. So you can actually do an evaluation and see, okay, you might qualify for this one. And we can work on getting that done because a lot of the grants may require a class or something that needs to happen. That's sometimes, most of the time, can be done after you're under contract. But the sooner and she can take that into account when approving you to purchase the home as well. Maybe if you're guaranteed to get a grant, she can take that into account and you might be able to qualify for more, than you're or originally. Or if you didn't have enough funds, maybe with the grant, you can actually have enough funds to purchase So that's why, going through this process is so important, because you're going to find out so much more than just, hey, now I can look for houses. Yes, maybe for sure you can qualify for X amount because you can afford monthly, but that doesn't mean it's going to make it super quick and easy to get your approval letter whenever you have that house that you found.
And with the grants, there's, depending on which one, I know 2 of them require a little bit more information.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need money for settlement, a grant is the best option, but you have to fit into the box. And having that conversation with me, depending on the grant or even the product, like USDA requires we count all household income, but so do some of the grant products that we offer. I know Tenfold does, as well as PHFA. So by talking to me, I need to know how many people are going to be living in the house, whether they're on the loan or not. If they produce an income, I need to know that. Yeah. So because you could, it's not always a bad thing to make a lot of money, but sometimes you get priced out of those products, because we've had that happen before. Because I may have had a borrower. I did have one borrower, we texted for the pre-approval, but then turns out he was married and his wife had income, and unfortunately they made too much money to get them closed, and we were able to get it through. However, those are things that we can tackle upfront right away to see if you fit into those boxes.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why it's super important to have that pre-approval and talk to somebody versus just going online and plugging some numbers in and just getting
assume that you can be good to go. Yeah. The other thing is too, like, some people may be able to tap into their 401k or not.
Yep.
Right? A lot of people hear, I can borrow funds from my 401k. I've had already 2 clients that were not able to tap into their 401k because their specific 401k didn't allow it without a penalty. So I'm like, okay, so now we know we cannot use this, as an option. So what do we do? And they fall for sure out. I'm just gonna use my 401k to purchase the house. So again, knowing that ahead of time, we are now able to prepare and do something different, approach that purchase a little different, and know what to expect. So you're not counting on something and then get to it and I'm like, oh shoot, now I don't have enough funds for it.
The other thing too, if you currently live in a house and you're selling it, you can use a home equity line of credit as down payment. You don't have to draw on it. You can it just has to be available to use, whether it's drawn on or not, but that can be used as down payment as well, because it's secured borrowed funds. So any secured borrowed funds, which would be something tied to real estate, that of the home that you're living in, as well, that's just like the 401k. That's secured borrowed funds because it's your 401k. But that's another thing that can be used. And I don't know that unless we talk. And I know you're looking to sell your house, but we can use that as your down payment. So that's a big thing too.
And like I said, they may or may not have to draw out of it. For example, we do this scenario where they're using the line of credit from their property that they currently own to, qualify to pay for the new house, but maybe their house didn't sell in time, and they do the draw to pay for the closing costs, and then the house ends up selling a little bit later. So that is great because it still works out. Or maybe they find a buyer for their house that they're selling just in time to make it the same settlement date for the new house, and they don't even have to tap into that. They can sell the house and pay the new one, right? So that's a great way of showing like the things that we can work around, knowing everything in advance so we can better prepare you to purchase. It's just really about putting you in the best place to buy, the best situation we can to help you buy and have a less stressful process, because I know buying a house is a big thing. It's involving a lot of money. It's very emotional, so it is already naturally going to be something that people are going to stress about. But if we can minimize by preparing as much as possible ahead of time, it will make your experience much better on the overall, process than finding these things last minute and trying to figure it out what are we going to do next. So huge point there, Kelly. So now we're going to get into another part of this episode where Kelly's going to really explain to you guys, once you sit down and start your pre-approval with her, how is it that you determine how much you can afford for the new property. So I'll let you take over.
Yep. So there's a couple of main points that which go into a pre-approval and looking at how much you can afford. So the first thing would be your income. A lot of people I talk to on the phone and I get their income over the phone. They say, oh, I make such and so much, $2,000 every 2 weeks. Well, I need to know your gross income. So a lot of people usually give me what their net is.
Bringing it home. Yeah.
So I will need the gross income, and that would be, so if you're hourly, I just get your hourly rate, and I figure out what your annual income is, and I find out if you have any overtime. That average, usually I can get off of a pay stub. I can see what your year-to-date is. The other piece is if you're salaried, I take what your salary is. And sometimes overtime can be averaged. So that's why I like to get the pay stub to see like how much you've been getting in overtime throughout the year. So that's a big thing. So your income, we need to determine what your gross income is, because a common guideline that is used with all lenders is that your current mortgage payment should not exceed 28% of your gross monthly income. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, but that is the rule. So if you're, whatever your income is, your mortgage is what we call your front end, your front end ratio. We don't like to see that go above 28%. So that's a big thing with determining how much you can afford with your home, because we're going to look at your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance not to exceed 28% of your gross monthly income.
Yeah.
So the next thing, so we take your expenses into account. And this would be any debts that you have, utilities, insurance, and property taxes. This will impact on how it will affect your mortgage. So that with those expenses that you have, that determines what your back end ratio should be. So we like to see 28 and 32. So 32 is a very good back end ratio to be part of. Now, there are definitely exceptions to that rule. With first-time home buyers and the FHA program, FHA can go up to a back end of 55%. Conventional, we don't like to go, depending on how good the credit is, we don't like to go above 45% for conventional. There is a hard stop on USDA at 42, I believe, as well. It's a hard stop for USDA at 42. VA, there is not a hard stop. I've gotten veterans approved back ends, as close to 60%. So they're a little bit more lenient with the veterans because you're a veteran, and it's just part of the deal.
Yeah, you earned it.
With your expenses, so 28 and 32, they're the good ones to look at. So if you're looking to get a pre-approval, you want to see your front end with your new mortgage to be 28 and your new mortgage plus all your other expenses to be 32. So those are two good numbers to stand by. Mm-hmm. So the next piece of your pre-approval is your down payment. So your down payment is a huge factor into how much home you can afford. If you don't have a whole lot to put down, that's where we can, see where you're at with the grant programs. But like I mentioned earlier, if a grant program is what you're looking to use, if it's something you need, there's a lot of criteria that we need to determine. And figuring out, the first thing was your income, because there are income limits with the grant programs. So again, down payment is a big thing that's part of it. If you have little down payment but you don't really want the grant programs, you also have to take into account your closing costs. So I do have a lot of people reach out to me like, oh, I have $5,000 and that's what I'm using for my down payment. I'm like, oh, okay, well, is that what you have total? Because most times your closing costs are probably going to be, depending on your purchase price, average $7,000 to $10,000. That goes along with whatever down payment money you have.
Yeah.
So that's where,
usually about 3 to 6% of the purchase price.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was just going to say that. And a lot of people don't understand that until, we sit down, I work on their pre-approval, and I'm like, okay, I always give a cost sheet, and cost sheets can be very confusing because there's a lot of things on there. And I go over what's on that cost sheet, what all the fees are. We don't charge many fees as a lender. Most of your settlement charges are through your title company. But I go over that with them just so they can see, well, yes, you have your $5,000 that you're looking to put down on the property, but then you also have all these closing costs.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we are using those grant programs for people, as long as they fit within that box, just to help with that down payment and closing costs. So down payment is a huge factor. You not only have to think about your down payment, you also have to think about, there's going to be closing costs as well.
Yeah. One thing to bring it up too, and you and I, we had clients that had to qualify in that situation where they didn't qualify for a grant for one reason or another. They didn't fit the box, and they didn't have enough funds. So you made the pre-approval contingent on them obtaining what's called the seller's assistance, and that's something that we can also try. You will limit that buyer. Yes, you will, because that means that buyer doesn't have enough funds, and the pre-approval is only valid if that buyer is able to negotiate with the seller. And that's where I come in and I try to negotiate on behalf of that buyer. So the seller pays for a portion of that buyer's closing costs. That's what's called seller's assistance. In Pennsylvania, I'm able to negotiate up to 6% for most loans. And I say most loans because conventional loans do have a cap of 3% for seller's assistance. If you're putting less than 10% down, and then if you're putting more, then you're allowed to get more. Is that right? That's what it is, right?
Yes. So
okay.
if you're putting more than 10%, it goes up to 6%. Anything less than 10% is 3%. FHA is 6%.
No matter what. Yeah.
VA, I believe,
USDA
is 6%. The governments, I believe, are 6%.
They're all 6%. Yeah. So we can take that into account, but please keep in mind that is a negotiation piece, it's not a guarantee factor. So if we find a home that you love and you are the only buyer, interested in that property, there's a high chance we might be able to negotiate seller's assistance if that seller's willing to do it. We could even maybe offer more to make up for the amount that you're getting as a seller's assistance. There's different ways to approach it. Mm-hmm. But if we find ourselves finding a property that has multiple offers, there's a very low chance that buyer that needs seller's assistance will be getting it, because it's a competition. Chances are people are offering higher and not necessarily asking for anything back. So, ideally you don't want to need it. That's why we usually try to fall back to grants first. But if you find yourself in a situation where you can go for a grant and the only cheap way to pre-qualify, to pre-approve, is having the seller's assistance, we can do that as well. It would just be a little bit tougher, maybe to find that property or not. I've had, I think the last 3 months, I've had probably 5 closings where the buyers all got our seller's assistance. So it's very doable, but it's just not guaranteed. So I like to make sure that people understand that. It is a negotiation piece.
And down payment can come from a gift as well.
That is true.
And we mentioned earlier, you can use your 401k.
Line of credit.
Most of them you can, depends on your 401k. You do have to check into it, as well as if you currently own a home, any secured borrowed funds from that home can be used as down payment. So those are different things to think about. There's no limit to how much gift you can get from a relative or friend. Like certain products, it doesn't always have to be a relative, but it all depends on what product you'd be putting you into, on what determines a gift, who you're getting the gift from. So that's the down payment. So the next thing is your interest rate. Interest rates can definitely affect how much you can borrow. Right now, we are in a rising rate environment. There doesn't seem to be much of an end in sight right now. I thought they kind of plateaued between the 6.5 to 7.5, but depending on the product and depending on what type of loan we're putting you into, sometimes it is pushing close to 8%. And the prediction right now is they're just going to continue to go up slowly for now. It's a slower pace than what it was,
but it's still going up. Yeah,
they are going up. There's no, rates are going to go down, in the election or the new year. No, it's not a thing. And, someday we hope they do go down. But when that time will be, we don't know yet. We don't have anything telling us when that's going to happen.
I can tell you that as of today, the national, and this is national, not local, not to you, just the national average interest rate for a 30-year fixed mortgage is 7.75. So that's where we are as of today as the national average. Now, local makes a difference depending on the area, and also of course each individual will vary substantially. So this is not to say that you are going to be getting a 7.75, but that is the national average as of today.
Yep,
which is
very cool. So the next piece is your interest rate. Wait, no, not interest rate.
The credit score.
It's your credit score.
Yeah.
Sorry. So your credit score is definitely a big piece of your pre-approval, and
for different reasons, right? There's different reasons why the credit score is so important.
Correct. So credit score, the better your credit score is, the better interest rate you're going to get. Maybe the better, there's a lot of things that the credit score can help. One
of them is the grants. So a lot of grants require a certain human credit score.
If you PHFA, your mid credit score must be a 660.
Yeah.
We can go as low as 620 on certain, if you're not looking to get the funds, but you're looking to get the little bit better interest rate for PHFA. At 660, the mid score must be 660 or above. Tenfold is 620 because that product it goes into is FHA. You can only use FHA with tenfold. And a lot of the other grants, they have certain, depending on the county, the most common product with the grants is FHA. PHFA, we can use any product with PHFA.
Yeah.
But that credit score must be 660 or above.
Correct.
We can go lower than 620 if we broker out the loan at Sierra. So we do have a couple brokers that we can use if your credit score is below the 620. We have New Res, we have Angel Oak, we have a couple different other ones that we use that I have gotten loans for a few people where their credit score was a little bit less than the 620.
I think the lowest is usually 580, right?
Yes.
No more than 580, no less than 580.
No less than 580. However, as with our system at Sierra, if your credit is a little bit less than where it needs to be, I am able to help bring it up. We do have a total expert system that, as long as you do what the total expert system tells you to do within the 30 days, I can bring your credit score up to where it needs to be. I can plug in some numbers and it'll tell me how to get you where you need to be. And I've done that for many people. So
that's why another reason why it's so important to get your pre-approval and actual pre-approval done and having the credit score full, because that you can do that. You can tell the person to step by step of what to do to get there. And it sometimes can take 3 months, depending on the person and where they are in their situation with credit scores and whatnot. So it's very important.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then the next thing would be any additional costs that go along with the mortgage, because there are additional costs. We have the first one is your homeowners insurance.
Yep.
When you purchase
That's something you can shop for.
Yes, you can shop for it. We do have a broker that we work with, that Nini and I work with, and you can use him. But if you have somebody that you already work with, great. I recommend shopping that around. Check with a couple different places. I know our insurance agent, he just likes to be up to bat. Whether you use him or you don't, you get a quote from him and he's not the right fit, great. You can definitely use somebody else.
Yeah.
But homeowners insurance is a thing. So a lot of people who are renting know they should have renter's insurance. If you have an agent that you use for your renter's insurance and you want to use them, great. As long as you have somebody to use for your homeowners. Right. But the next cost would be your property taxes. Yeah. With your property taxes, there are 2 different types in PA. You have your school taxes, but you also have your city and county taxes. And that's a thing that not a lot of people know, that there's 2 sets. So your city and your county, they're collected at the beginning of the year, usually January, February, you get that bill. And then your school taxes is a big one.
Usually.
September, October. Yeah. When you purchase a home, not a new build, would be a home that has already built, an existing home, we collect for 12 months of both your homeowners and your taxes up front. So that's just something to keep in mind.
That's going to be part of your closing costs. So a lot of people don't know what the closing costs are and what's included in there. And we do have an episode, if you guys ever, wondering what are closing costs. We have an episode that we dedicated explaining everything that could potentially be in our closing costs. And we break that down. But basically, your real estate tax is a big part of it because they do have to collect in advance together with the homeowners insurance. I think it's 3 months usually of that.
Yep. So some other costs that you may have are flood insurance. Yeah. If the property that you're purchasing is in a flood zone, you are required to get flood insurance. And flood insurance can be expensive.
Depending what area of flood.
What's that?
I said depending on what the area of the floodplain that your property is located at.
Yep. And flood insurance must be paid prior to closing. A lot of people don't realize that it works a little differently than your homeowner's insurance, but flood has to be paid upfront prior to closing in full. And so it's definitely, when you're looking at a property and it's in a flood zone, it's definitely something to keep in mind.
Very true.
And some other fees would be like if you're looking to purchase in a PUD or like in a condominium, there are usually homeowners association fees associated with those properties. Every homeowners association is different. Mm-hmm. I did have one where they required it to be completely paid, even though you paid out of your monthly payment. I forget what it was called, but they collected it up front. they collected the full amount of the HOA fee upfront.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I know they usually have an origination fee as well. Like maybe your monthly HOA fee, let's say it's $100, but they may have an initiation fee of $500, and then that $500 becomes part of your closing costs, together with maybe 3 months of prorated, payments. If they escrow, some of them don't escrow, which means you're just going to pay that separately directly to the HOA community, but they still may require some to be escrow ahead in advance should they have you set in a system or whatever. So they are all different. But that's definitely something to keep in mind, because it could be potentially part of your closing costs, and it most likely will if there is an HOA. And condo as well. Condo is the same way.
Yep. And another expense would be your private mortgage insurance. This is something that's part of your monthly payment. If that's another thing that has gotten better over the years. A lot of people used to hate having to pay mortgage insurance, but the rates have gotten tremendously better over the years. And that is another thing, that if your credit is very good, your rates on your private mortgage insurance they're lower, they're better. So that's just something else to keep in mind with having a good credit score. It does help with your mortgage insurance, but overall mortgage insurance has over the years gotten much better.
Not as expensive.
What's that?
I said not as expensive as it used to be.
Yes, it used to be very expensive. And I mean, depending on the product of the house, there's a lot of things that go into play with that, because with FHA, you have a mortgage insurance premium as well as mortgage insurance. And your mortgage insurance premium, you pay that over the life of the loan. It's just part of FHA. And your mortgage insurance, that does eventually drop off at 78 or 80% if you call and have it. But the mortgage insurance premium, you do pay that for the life of the loan.
That's right.
So with that being said, that about sums it up for extra costs. There will be probably some other small ones like prepaid interest and little things like that. But like Mimi said, we did have a whole episode on closing costs and goes over all that. I highly recommend going back through our podcasts and reviewing that. But those, what I just went over, those are big things that are additional costs that people don't think about. When it comes time for closing. So, so that about sums up, what is needed when we're looking to see, how much you can afford. It's definitely a big thing. If you are thinking about buying a house, don't wait. Don't wait to sit down and talk to me or, a lender just to see where you're at. I don't have to pull your credit, but we can sit and talk about it and see where you're at. Like you mentioned earlier, like your pre-approval is good for, I think you said 180 days. I think ours are 120 days, somewhere around there. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's good for a while. At least 3 months, but I don't have to pull credit, but we can talk about it. And I wouldn't wait. If you're thinking about it, don't wait, especially in this market. It's a really crazy market. And
you got to be ready to go.
It hasn't ended. So, I mean,
even if you're not sure of when exactly is going to be like the time you're actually purchasing, but you are thinking about it, you want to prepare for it, the best route is really to just start talking to a loan officer. Preferably you can call Kelly to chat. I'll have our information here running in the bottom, just to go ahead and get started with that pre-approval process, or at least a conversation, because like we said there, she can just try to get you a pre-qualification to get started. That way you know what you need to do and what you need to work on, how much you need to save and whatnot. That way when it's time and you're like, okay, now I'm ready, then we can actually do a full pre-approval and you can start shopping for homes at that point. That's the goal between the two. And that's how the timing, the steps should be. We get a pre-approval, start searching for homes and whatnot. We usually do that backwards, which is, it's a common misconception. That's why we're here to try to guide you guys the best we can.
Like the builder one we had the other day, don't wait.
Don't wait.
Just like, don't wait. When people are thinking about building, don't wait. If you're thinking about buying, don't wait, because you never know until you pick up the phone and call somebody to see where you're at in the process.
Exactly. It doesn't hurt to ask questions. So if you are uncertain, but you have that in mind that buying a house is your goal, just get in touch with us sooner rather than later, because the worst case scenario, we're going to tell you, look, you're not ready now, but this is what you need to do to get ready for it. And best case scenario, like we get you an approval and you can shop tomorrow for a home, you know.
Yeah.
So it just depends on you reaching out and getting that first step started, which it needs to get pre-approval, or at least attempting a conversation towards it. So, yeah. And that's it for today, guys. I hope this was, very informational for you. Hopefully helps you out on your home buying journey. And we are here to help you every step of the way, so don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much, Kelly, for giving us so much insight in the financial.
You're very welcome.
As always. Thank you, guys. Have a good one. See you next time.
Yep. See ya.